Please welcome back Jennifer Smith.
Turn it up!
How are we all doing? Great. Excellent. How are the breakout sessions? Oh, well, okay. I guess they were all right. Good. Well, welcome back. We're in the final part of our day, another exciting part because we have now more customers and more experienced individuals to share insights, which I think is one of the most valuable parts of a day like today. So thank you for coming back in for this final session. This next session, I'm going to speak to a lady called Deb, who's going to join me in a minute on stage. She was the former director of BPM at Pfizer. And I think the reason why this is going to be a really interesting session is that we're really seeing a rise in business process management as a way in which to get more efficiency and return on some already previous investments in technology, and also being used when investing new technology to make sure that those returns can be seen. So Deb, please join me on stage and we'll get into our session. Thank you. We don't have so many things in our hands. When we were rehearsing yesterday, we had all these things that were a little challenging,
and our
a little more efficient today. So thank you for being with us. We really appreciate your time. Just for some perspective, let me get this right. You have been a 20-year ARIS user?
21
year ARIS user. I think we can say, and take this in the wrong way, I don't mean to insult, but a veteran business process management expert, so we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So you've been in this field for some time, and you've spent a lot of time at Pfizer specifically, working on making sure that your SAP implementation could be maximized. So tell us a little bit about how you worked with BPM to actually bring additional return on that investment, if you will.
Certainly. So let's start at the beginning. So at Pfizer, we were actually implementing a very large ERP solution initiative, and my team is responsible for BPM. Now, as a part of implementing a BPM implementing an SAP solution, the first thing you need to do is really define your business processes. So my team being BPM, we first identified the processes that we were going to be responsible for. So our main focus was really with supply chain. We then documented the procurement processes, the finance, the master data, warehouse management, and so on and so forth. These processes really formed a basis for us to then launch all of our other initiatives. And part of our group then was to actually do a lot of CI transformation type work. Our group also supported the SAP configuration team in configuring the solution for SAP. But then in addition to that, these processes form a foundation for the next wave of technology, such as robotic process automation. We are really well aligned for the regulatory mandates, such as GDPR, as well as mergers and acquisitions. So again, it's so important to make sure that we have a good, solid foundation so that we can build upon it. And then from there, we also do a lot of analytics. So we use the Mesh Zone product in order to gain a lot of that information that we had within our ARIS repository.
So you just touched upon there about regulations and a highly regulated market globally for Pfizer, for example, and you mentioned GDPR, and I think that's something that many businesses worldwide are going through. So give us a little bit of perspective in terms of how the work you've done set you up in really good stead for new regulations like GDPR and how that was beneficial.
Well, obviously, GDPR is all about compliance. And in order to be compliant, the first thing that GDPR requires you to do is document your business processes. And at Pfizer, we were very fortunate in the fact that the majority of our processes, especially within the supply chain area, were all documented. So for Pfizer, this initiative is really about extending what we currently have. And what's really cool about the new GDPR solution is the fact that we can actually put these articles or the regulations, as they call them, within the ERIS repository. And then what we would need to do is actually take these various articles, associate it to the impacted activity. From there, you can identify your data that's being required of that particular requirement, identifying whether it's private or public. And that's part of the rationale that you have to prove for this particular requirement. Also, another benefit to the ERIS product is the fact that you can automatically generate the regulatory documentation that's required for this particular area.
Great, so you're already set up to take
Absolutely.
such a new regulation. Great. So give us an example of one of the teams that you worked with. When we talked, I guess I was surprised to see 95% of the business, I think you said, was running on SAP, right? So a huge investment and a huge part. So give us an example of one of the teams that you worked with and the value that you could demonstrably bring to them.
So there's several different areas that we've actually worked with. As I was telling Jennifer, one of the most recent initiatives that my team was involved in was with the network engineering group. And we had actually worked with this group several years prior to develop their business processes. And now fast forward several years, and this particular group was actually adding on to the functionality of this particular process. Plus, with the new initiative coming down the pike, they had some new requirements. And they also had some issues that they needed to resolve. So they were actually upgrading the value of this particular solution. What our team did is actually go in, work with the business clientele to, first of all, identify what we call their pain points, or in some cases, just the gaps that they had within the solution. And then what our team does is take those particular pain points / gaps, and we rank them in terms of detectability, severity, as well as the frequency of occurrence. We would take this information then, and we actually went into a workshop, and those highest level issues we would focus on first and then go down through the list, so on and so forth. But the main goal of this was to remediate the problem. So within this workshop, then we would identify or actually recommend what we needed to do to fix these issues. Now, coming out of this workshop, we would assign these particular recommendations to teams of individuals to work on. And then what we would do is take all this information, round trip it back, and put it back within the ERIS repository. So we actually have a history of all the work that's been done.
And getting this buy-in, how easy was it?
Well, you know, at first, as with anything, buy-in is not always apparent, and it was a journey. So back in 2007, when I first started with Wyeth at the time, we had some folks who were really anxious about what we were wanting to do, and then we had others that were less anxious. And so what we did, we focused on those individuals that were keen for our help. And so with any initiative, I would say find those folks that are friendly, who are wanting to adopt, to work with you. And then what we did, again, we took those folks, we worked with them, we got our small wins, and we continued that, that method of getting buy-in through the years. Upon my departure from Pfizer, we were actually in a point where we weren't going out and soliciting business, they were coming to us. So I think that's a really good place to be.
You're a victim of your own success,
exactly.
Getting more and more demand.
Exactly.
And you mentioned since you left, and I know you have a colleague here as well that has taken over this work that you've done, this foundation. So what's the next step now for Pfizer in, how this can continue to evolve?
So you guys are going to hear about it tomorrow, but his name is Steve Arone. He's my colleague, and he's taken over. And I told him, I said, I feel like this is my baby. I've left it at a point where I've developed a very strong foundation. And Steve is really great in analytics and robotic process automation. He's got the mobility background. So that's where he's going to be taking our program next. So you guys need to come back tomorrow to hear him speak.
great. Thank you for being part of that too. So just any more final points that you'd like to, words of wisdom, advice after 21 years with Eris that you'd like to share with anyone?
Well, just a few. So, as with any new initiative, you're always going to have pushback. But when we started, the one thing which I was not so keen on when I first started this at Wyeth, but I had to create a charter. And that actually became a blessing in disguise. So I would highly encourage anybody just starting the BPM path to create your charter. And the first thing within the charter is actually identifying where you're going, what you're trying to accomplish. Once we got that strategy put together, and again, it didn't take years, it was just a matter of weeks we put this document together. We then created the infrastructure. Now, within the infrastructure, I made sure that my methodology was well-defined. I made sure that my Eris repository, the structure there was well-defined, and I knew the direction that I was going. From there, I actually trained a couple of my architects that worked under me. And again, our program never had hundreds of architects. At the high point of our, within the 10 years that I worked for Pfizer, I had 10 architects at the most. So, it does not require a whole host of people, but it does require individuals who have a very specialized skill set. So those folks were really good, and we accomplished a great deal within a short time frame. But again, we took our wins as we had it, and we just kind of marched through the program and stuff. But I left on a very good note.
Great. Create your charter, everyone. Create your charter. Thank you so much, Deb. We really appreciate you being a lifelong member of our family. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you so much.